Welcome to Navigating the Truth, and it is March 12, 2023. And my guest today is Russ Tanner from Global Skywatch. Enjoy the show.
Right.
We interrupt to bring you this.
We've hijacked your daily dose of regurgitated news to bring you Navigating the Truth. Brace yourself, listeners, as you're about to enter a world where the narrative is no longer masqueraded as the truth. A world where the conspiracies of yesterday's translate into the truths of today.
Are you listening?
The veils covering the truth are lifting, and understandings once suppressed are finally being revealed. Will you be ready? And now, your host and navigator through these circles of lies, the host of Navigating the Truth, Caroline Bell Tumblety.
Hello, welcome to Navigating the Truth, and it is Sunday, and in your neck of the woods over there in America, your clocks all went forward. So now we're operating, instead of being 8 hours behind, this week I am 7. Or ahead. I'm ahead. Yeah. Oh, I wish they would just stop doing it. Anyway, thank you, listeners, for deciding to join us today. And if you have any questions for our guest, I have an awesome guest today. You can type it in chat or on Skype. There is a donation button on the KCOR digital website. And if you like what you're hearing, hit the donate button. There are a lot of different channels and everything. There's something there for everybody. And my web address is souliam.org, and you can email me at caroline at souliam.com. And now I am going to read the bio for our awesome guest, who is Russ Tanner. And Russ has been so kind to join me today, and it is really an honor. Russ Tanner is founder and president of Herb Allure, Inc., a company that publishes scientific research about herbs, nutritional supplements, and essential oils. He is also founder of the Global Skywatch website, which raises awareness about the many dangers of geoengineering. Russ has suffered and recovered from mercury toxicity and educates others on how to do the same. He has been interviewed on numerous radio and internet programs and has published articles and given lectures on the dangers of amalgam films. I always have a problem with that word. Mercury toxicity, geoengineering-related illnesses, and geopolitics. And Russ has a website. He has a YouTube, Global Skywatch. He also has a website. He's on Facebook. And at some point, I'll get him to give you all that information. But right now, give a warm welcome to Russ Tanner. Welcome, Russ.
Thanks for having me on. It's great to speak with you today.
Yeah, this is the first time. And I'd like to thank Solaris Blue Raven for the recommendation that I reach out to you. And thank you for accepting my invitation. And shall we get to it?
Absolutely.
Okay. So chemtrails, for any of the listeners who, they may have heard the term, but they may be in some doubt. Like how can, like I know, I see them. I've been seeing them for a long time. And they are certainly different from any other cloud. They have weight to them, for one thing, the way that they billow. Is that the word? Billow? They kind of, you can see them kind of falling. It's like a falling and a spreading out.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking about the trails behind jets.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. We've seen these. I first saw them in 2003 was the very first time I ever saw them in my life. And what's interesting about that is that all my life I was into aviation and astronomy. I was always watching the sky, rockets and jets. I used to collect pictures when I was a kid. So it was really a big deal for me to watch this and to watch the sky. Mm-hmm. And I've never seen that before. And I used to fly every year when I was growing up. I lived in the busiest airspaces in the world, just north of Tampa Bay. You could hardly ever look up in the sky without seeing jets in the sky.
Right.
Sometimes we'd even see jet fighters go by from MacDill Air Force Base in South Tampa. It'd be kind of cool to see a couple jets. About once a month, we'd see some like F-14, 16s or something fly over real fast.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, there was always something in the sky. I also spent time when I was young in junior high school. I lived in Rockville, Maryland, which was also a very busy airspace there near Washington, D.C. Anyway, so I've watched the sky all my life, and I never in my life ever saw a trail behind a jet except at an air show where they do it intentionally.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so it was basically in 2005 is the first time I saw it happen on a daily basis. Never, ever seen it before. I was sitting in my office and I had a view that overlooked the entire city of Jamestown, New York, which is where I lived at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked outside. I lived in I worked. My office was like in a green room where it had all windows. It was surrounded by windows, so it was really cool. Mm-hmm. And I saw this big trail go. This jet flew really low over my house. And what's funny about that is you never see jets in Jamestown because the airport can't handle regular commercial jets. It can only handle small, what we call puddle jumper jets, or not jet, but planes and stuff. So you never ever see jets in the sky. It's very, very rare. Well, this was really low and it left this big trail. And about 30 minutes later, maybe 40 minutes later, I started tasting metal in the air so strong.
Wow.
And it started burning my sinuses. I started getting muscle aches, joint aches. I got a really bad headache. And at the time I had 3 employees. I ran a business out of my home, and I'd have 3 local people who would come over who were employees. And we would have a business meeting at the end of every day to discuss what was going on in the day. And I had to cancel the meeting because I felt so horrible and I could taste the metal in the air and I had all of these symptoms. I'm like, what is going on? And it happened just 30 or 40 minutes after this big plume was laid down right over my house.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was my introduction. I started looking this up online and immediately I found information. This was before Google was as censored as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I found information from Carnicom and other sources about chemtrails. I'm like, oh my gosh, is this what's happening? And then from that day forward, they started hitting us every day. It was on a schedule. They hit us about 2 hours apart. And I started having all of these health symptoms that only occurred when the fallout from the trail would hit us. So I'd see the plume go over, and about 30 or 40 minutes later, I'd have all these symptoms. I would taste the metal in the air. I would smell the weird, it would kind of burns my sinuses, and then it would go away, dissipate over the space of the next 45 minutes or an hour. And that's how it all began for me. And that's what chemtrails are. When you see those lines behind jets, and now they're making them short. They're trying to hide them from people.
Yeah.
And beginning in 2009, they started making them shorter and flying at higher altitudes, I believe, to keep them out of the sight of most people. And where I used to live, you could go out at any time of the day back in 2010, and there would be anywhere between maybe 15 to 40 trails in the sky. You could go into Bangor, Maine, and see the same thing. And now I hardly ever see trails except little tiny short ones that you can hardly see. That's all you see. Yet the air intensity is just as bad as it was. The plumes still fall and they still hit us. So that's what the chemtrails are all about.
Yeah, we see them here. Like I see them, the big X's in the sky. It's like a grid. It's like a grid that they're kind of working. We still get the long ones, maybe because information's a little slower at getting out here. I don't really know. But I hear them through the night. Nighttime seems to be a particularly high time for them to be out flying. They're distinctive. Like it's a rumbling jet. It vibrates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And they still are spraying long ones in many areas. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because they really have to do that. They have spread this propaganda that these type of engines, which are called high bypass turbofan engines, they have spread this propaganda all around the world saying, oh, those are just harmless jet trails. That's just harmless water vapor. Mm-hmm. Well, they can't get rid of them all of a sudden, because then people would ask, where do they all go? Why did jet engines suddenly stop producing these trails? So they have to keep the trails in the sky to some degree. And we do see them here maybe a couple times a month, or a few times a month. I'll see the long trails here once in a while, but it's nothing like it was, 5, 10 years ago, where the sky literally you could go out and count, 10 to 40. There are times I'd counted 40, 50, 60 trails, or saw maybe 13 jets. And Bangor only has like one airport. It's not that busy.
Right.
It's really not busy at all. It's a very slow airport compared to the places I used to live. But yet, I remember going to Bangor, and at any given time, you could see 4, 5, 7. There are times I saw 14 jets in the sky at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So they really are. They're still doing long trails, but they really, in many areas, there's kind of slowly making them harder to see, so the public doesn't, doesn't think about them so much.
Well, I mean, growing up, I'm 61. Growing up, the sky looked quite a bit different. Billowy clouds, blue sky. Even the sun. I remember the sun looking different when I was younger. Maybe up until about maybe 20 years, a little longer than 20 years ago, I started noticing changes. What is the purpose of them?
Well, I think there are two major purposes. I think, and there's some what I call sub-purposes, but the major purposes, in my opinion, and just so people know, this is not just me forming some, off-the-cuff theory. When you really learn about what the philosophies of the people who run the world are, they have a belief system that makes them believe that they have the right and the duty to depopulate the earth. And this is the philosophy of many of the highest, I don't like to call them leaders, but the people who are in the current position of power, and they have a lot of influence. These people actually believe they have the right and the responsibility in their eyes to reduce population. So I believe it is to reduce population. Of course, what other reason would you be spraying these metals? I mean, we have a lot of information about what these things contain, and we're talking about poisons like mercury, lead, barium, strontium, cadmium, arsenic. You don't spray these things on the population to make them stronger. Yeah. So depopulation would be one of the reasons. I also, because I can smell and taste them, there's another program that's happening simultaneously that sprays different types, because I've identified about 14 different types of trails. They have different odors, different tastes, and they're sprayed in different patterns. And I have kept track of this. I've tracked this intentionally. And so I think another reason, because there's another subtype of chemtrails, particularly the ones I call the barium types, are associated with incoming weather fronts. So when we have precipitation or we have snow incoming, I will start to taste this particular type, which I call the barium type, and almost without fail, I know that there's bad weather coming in when I taste this. They spray this about anywhere between 4 to 12 hours ahead of incoming fronts. I can then go to radar and I can see these fronts coming in. And once I start tasting this particular type in the air, you can watch them within a couple hours just completely wipe out these huge fronts that are coming in over Maine, where I live, very, very quickly. So I think weather control is another reason for it. And obviously, I think there are some sub-purposes, and one of them obviously is the medical complex and the pharmaceutical complex, who I believe are all controlled by the same people who control governments. Yeah. They're all the same people. Once you draw the lines and you connect all the dots, it's like there's a small group of people who are running everything. Well, they're profiting tremendously, because if you look at the attendance levels in hospitals, they are very, very good at keeping hospitals full without terribly overflowing them, because they don't want to alert the public that something is strangely wrong, but they do want to keep those hospitals full. And I have noticed also that as they built more over a period of time, I've tracked this as well, in certain areas like Dunedin, Florida, where they built 2 new hospitals in the last 10 years, that the average spraying intensity, when I go there and smell and taste it, when I visit there, that it is actually higher than it was before those hospitals were built. The same thing in here in Maine, is they put a big addition onto the hospital here over the last 5 years. And during that time, when that wing was done, the overall average intensity in this area increased noticeably. They
Mm-hmm.
kicked it up a notch, as a lot of people like to say. So I think a sub-purpose of this is also they're profiting tremendously from the disease of that they're causing by spraying people with these poisons.
Yeah, yeah, and it's so sinister. You know, I mean, after what the whole world has went through in the last 3 years, if people are not seeing that something is seriously wrong, I don't know what to say. You know, I just don't know what to say.
Yeah, I think people are really scared of this, and
Mm-hmm.
so the public is largely in denial. The people who are on the forefront of covering this truth have to have a lot of guts. They either have a lot of courage, or they've gone through a lot of pain and they're sick and don't want to take it anymore. And I kind of put
Mm-hmm.
myself into that category, because normally I wouldn't be doing interviews and things. I'm a little bit more of a private person, and that's the kind of life I wanted to live. But being the suffering that I have gone through, because it's caused me a lot of health problems over the years.
Yeah.
And not only is it the metals I talked about too, but to expand this a little bit, is they also spray biologics. And
Mm-hmm.
I can get into this as well too, but I have seen when they have sprayed biologic types that they will actually cause what they call a flu outbreak in our area. um, After they spray biologics into the air after a day or two, and especially after they do it 3 days in a row, they end up having so many people getting sick in this area that they will shut down schools, and the doctor's offices will get full. Um, well, they're always full anyway, typically, but you end up having a long wait to get your children into the pediatrician's office. And so
Yeah.
that's another aspect of it as well, biologic.
Well, they're playing the long game, right? It's like slowly poisoning. And also the propaganda, like that's never changed. They just like the propaganda is just rampant. So like every time like somebody like yourself will come, like you have researched it, you have experienced what it has done to you like physically in your body, and you're bringing it like to the people, and then there's all this counter stuff that starts to flood into the what would we call it? Like it's no mainstream. It's like the alternative, and it would no, they're contrails. And I heard you saying, and I think it was on the last interview you did with Solaris. You were saying when you go outside and it's cold, and you breathe, you see your breath, but it doesn't turn into a cloud.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's a big difference between these jet engines and
Mm-hmm.
exhaling. And I know the propaganda says, oh, these are just harmless contrails, and that is an absolute lie.
Right.
They're not contrails. I smell the fallout from them, but also I'm in a unique position because I have watched the sky since I was a young child. I mean, my
Mm-hmm.
first interest in my life was all about aviation and planes, and I collected, thousands and thousands of pictures. And I never, even in all the literature and all the books I read, I never encountered the word contrail. And
Right.
now what they're doing is you know how we hear stories about how world leaders change history in order to control the present.
Yes.
That is what's happening right now. Is now they have altered history, and they're saying, no, these things have been around forever. And you can see articles that look like they came from newspapers, back in the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
being thrown around saying the sky is covered with these trails and we must do something about it. So they have this cover story saying, oh, they came out with some technology to suppress the trails so they wouldn't interfere with sunlight. I was around. I was
Hmm.
alive. I was watching the sky. None of this ever happened.
No.
There was no thing as a trail. And the whole idea, a lot of the propagandists try to sell this lie to the people saying, oh, well, it's just like when you exhale in cold air, you see that smoke. That's what's coming out of the engine. It's nothing compared to that, because the moisture coming out of your breath is extremely, extremely dense with moisture, and you have a very small air to moisture ratio. In
Mm-hmm.
these jets, as they have made them more and more efficient, they combust. Only about 15% of the air coming out the back is actually combusted. The rest of the air is thrown out and mixed with the combusted air, so that combusted air is immediately flooded with extremely high volumetric pressure containing just air, just ambient air. Because
Mm-hmm.
inside a jet engine, it's really just like a prop. It's what they call a ducted turbofan. And the fact that the word ducted in there means it's a duct. In other words, it's a propeller, but it's surrounded by, it's in a cage. It's in a circular cylindrical cage because that makes it more efficient. So it's really a prop plane, a prop jet with a duct around it and with a turbine in the middle. So when you mix all of that combusted air, which is 15% of the air in the center of the exhaust plume coming out of the engine, and you thrust 85% of that ambient air, that super dry, cold air that's up there at those altitudes, there's no way that you will have condensation trails form. So imagine if you're exhaling and you have cold air into the cold air and you see your breath, right? Well, get a very, very high power blower right next to your face. Exhale with that blower across your face and see how much of a trail you see. You won't see any. You won't see any at all. And it also has to do with the amount of efficiency that these engines have. Is that in our calculations, when you look at the actual fuel consumption of one of these engines, we're talking about a gallon of fuel about every 0.2 of a mile. Okay, so I would love people to think, go down the road about 0.2 of a mile with a gallon jug full of water. Now tell me, if you look at the size of these trails, and I'm talking about even the short ones, the wingspan of a 747, we see a lot of 747s leaving trails here. We see a lot of DC-9s. We see a lot of 737s. And all of these happen to be aircraft that are used by the military for tankers. Okay, just a coincidence, right? So these jets, when you go outside and you have a gallon jug, if you look at the wingspan of these jets, these plumes spread larger than the wingspan. Now, 747 has a wingspan that's almost 300 feet, which is the size of a football field. Okay, and then this trail, if you look at the length of the jet, and you see that even these non-persistent trails will be, 30 to 40 jet lengths in length, even the very quickly dissipating ones.
Yep.
Well, that's a mile. I mean, so what they're trying to sell you, the propagandists are saying 1 gallon of water, because they're saying that, when you burn jet fuel, it converts to water, which is partly true. Only some of it converts to water, but they try to say it actually creates more water than it does. But there's more propaganda. It gets complicated. But can you produce with 1 gallon of water or 2 gallons of water a plume the width of 3 city blocks that is 0.2 of a mile long? Are you going to be able to do that with 2 gallons of water? When you run the numbers, that's what it breaks down to. And the problem is most people don't run the numbers. And when you do, and they hear somebody like me on the radio talking about this, they're like, well, no, these are all professionals. They must know what they're talking about. It's in the text, it's in the textbooks. So I get it's hard to believe that. But I would challenge people, go run the numbers, look at the fuel consumption of an engine versus the speed. Look at the size of the trail, calculate it by using the size of the jet, and you'll see that what they're asking you to believe is absurd. It just doesn't make any logical sense.
Yep, and we're coming up on a break right now, so hang on to your seats, listeners. We will be right back.
You're listening to Navigating the Truth with Caroline Bell Tumblety, where the truth survives and the lies are exposed.
I just want to assure you that everything is under control. There's been no damage except for some temporary malfunction of the radio.
Come be a part of this awakening by joining us in chat or by calling our hotline at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers, find us on Skype at KCOR Radio.
We're pushing the ultimate frontier here.
Control must be maintained.
More disinformation exposed and the truth discovered. After a word from our sponsors.
1 million miles till midnight. A story of timelines, artificial worlds, simulated races, and the galactic imprint, and the destiny of a blue world called Earth. 1 million miles till midnight, written by Solaris Blue Raven, is a journey through the mind's eye which allows the reader to surf a wave of technological and multidimensional intellect, revealing a bridge between conscious design and the truth. A multidimensional bleed-through awakens the world of artificial intelligence to set sail into the frontiers of a vast multiverse, morphing planets and terraforming ascended worlds beyond the linear programs of a fated race. 1 million miles till midnight will awaken, inspire, prepare, and enlighten one to the many multidimensional states of consciousness and worlds we reside in. With every cell and atom, we are this truth and multiverse. 1 million miles till midnight. Written by Solaris Blue Raven. Available now at Amazon.com. Don't wait. Get your copy today.
1, 2, 3, 4!
To the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
I love the way it sounds.
Love the music. I listen all day.
The future of radio is here and now.
Alien Deceptions, a suspenseful sci-fi romance thriller by Tina Marie, featuring the tantalizing Erica Jones and the mysterious Russell Hamilton. An out-of-this-world book of fiction based on years of document facts and files the government does not want you to know about, at least not yet. Alien Deceptions by Tina Marie. Available now at Amazon.com or get a signed copy at TinaMarieEntertainment.com. Get your copy now.
Change your frequency, change your life with the Lemurian Plug. The Lemurian Plug is easy to control, simple to set up, and wireless. It helps to neutralize toxins and has restorative frequencies for healing. It also helps to protect you and your family from EMFs. The Lemurian Plug is energy efficient and designed using ancient technology for a superior design. One unit can cover up to 1,000 square feet. This life-changing product is reasonably priced. And isn't your family's health worth a small investment? For more information on the miraculous effects of this plug or to purchase the Lemurian Plug, visit thelemurianplug.com. That's thelemurianplug.com. The Lemurian Plug is like nothing you've ever experienced. Order yours today.
Vegas, baby! Vegas' #1 source for talk and new music.
How cool is that?
Going live in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Navigating the Truth, the one show that peels back the masks of the elite and exposes the truth we're not being told.
Here to warn you. You must not abuse the power you've been given. Eventually, you will lose control of that power and the whole world will suffer.
Come partake in the awakening by calling the show at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Give us a call now.
Those around the world, connect with us on Skype at KCOR Radio. Follow us on Twitter at KCOR Radio or use hashtag KCOR. Come engage in the discussion live in our chat room at www.kcorradio.com.
Our survival depends upon it.
Now, back to examining the narratives and uncovering the truth with your host of Navigating the Truth, Caroline Bell Tumblety. Caroline Bell Tumblety.
Hi, welcome back to Navigating the Truth, and I have an awesome guest. I'm really enjoying this. Russ Tanner has joined me today, and right before the break, you were breaking it down for us with the gallon jugs and like just running the numbers. That it just makes sense, you know, and what they're telling us makes no sense.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about on the break too, and I would love for people to hear some of the conversations we have during the breaks as well. Yeah. Is that, you know, but I mean, people have to realize that the news agencies are all, they're all involved in spreading propaganda. Whether you believe your news anchor knows about it or not. And I think many of them don't know. They just are doing their job, and they're just repeating what they're told to read. But when you understand the actual big plan, when you understand what the big plan is and what they're doing, you can see the propaganda, and you will recognize it not only in the news, but it's also in television shows, it's in movies, it's all over the place. And it's very, very clever. People have to realize that these people are better than screenwriters for movies, which of course may not be saying much for a lot of these movies we have today. But nevertheless, these people are very, very skilled, because they don't just give you propaganda. They will feed you all, false information that will cause you to reach a false conclusion, or the conclusion that they want you to reach. So propaganda is an art and a science, and they're very, very good at it. And once you start running the numbers and doing a little research, you'll see that not only chemtrails, but so many other things that are going on and have gone on in the world, including the whole debacle we've had in the last couple of years, is completely saturated with false news, fake science, and false information, and just to control the story, to make the public believe something that is not true.
Yeah. And it is like, for me, it was just shocking the way that they were shutting people down, that actually had a brain, and were saying, oh, wait a wee minute, there's a study here, there are doctors here that are saying something a bit different from what you're saying, and they were shutting them down. People were like, what were they calling it, cancelled? They were being, and a lot of, well, I wonder, like, as far as like the entertainment and the media, there's probably a lot of fear there, as far as saying the wrong thing and losing their jobs.
Oh, absolutely. I think it goes further than that. I think, I've been keeping track of all the propaganda that I see, and I don't watch that much television, but what little stuff I do watch, I do track what I see. And I've come to the conclusion. I was in theater, not on the stage, but backstage. I was a technical director for a theater for about 11 years, a small theater, and met a lot of people, and was involved in the industry, and met even some famous people over the years. But what I've concluded is that, for instance, if you're making a movie, or if you have a television show, you won't even get a contract unless you have certain elements in your show that push certain agendas. Right. You have to be playing ball with them. And if you're not playing ball with them, then you're not going to get a renewal contract on your television show or your movie. And it's kind of like an unspoken truth that everybody knows. And there's been movies made about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right away, I think the comedian Dave Chappelle, like, he went through something like that. They offered him like a lot of money, and basically he had to kind of convert, or like accept some of the scenes that they were writing. Like, they would make little changes, and he wasn't up for it. He just wasn't. I remember that was a big deal. And I even remember him being on one of the really popular. Thank you for listening to Navigating the Truth. And my guest this week was Russ Tanner. If you would like to hear the rest of the show, please go to kcorradio.com, and the archive there is free. Thank you.